Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Rotation on the RØKKR YouTube and wherever you can listen to podcasts, I'm pretty sure. How you guys doing? I'm here with, oh man, we've got a packed house tonight. My goodness, we got 5 people in the building. My name is Ashley,
Deep.
aka MiDNiTE. As always, I am joined by IKON and Kingdom, and this week we're treated to the coaches being on. Guys, you're no stranger to the podcast here on the RØKKR YouTube, but this one I think is your first rotation appearance. So welcome Saintt and welcome Reppin. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. I know it's been an absolutely insane buck wild week for you guys, and I'm sure at this point you're just trying to take the new player, the new roster, and just get to it. But I just want you on here to ask you even more questions, and I'm sure the chat is really excited to kind of hear what's been going on. So to go over it a little bit and just get right into it, in case you guys missed it, Minnesota RØKKR, we've made a roster change here on the starting lineup for Minnesota RØKKR. So I don't know, Jake or Brian, or maybe both of you, can you explain to me what happened, what roles changed, and as a result of that, who is on the team now, and just tell me the deal.
Yeah, so basically, we all kind of came to the conclusion ourselves and every single player on the team that Preston needed to switch to a second AR role, considering he, stated he felt super uncomfortable in the second sub. It was working really well in practice, but once we went to the matches, it just didn't translate even close to the same way that it was, every day when we were practicing. So that was pretty much decided unanimously by everyone. And that kind of put us in a situation where we could either A, move Mike to a second SMG, or B, make the decision to bring in a younger talent SMG from Challengers and, keep Mike or Lamar in the main AR role and then, inevitably bench someone.
And Jake, tell me about as a reaction to that, or kind of who have you guys brought on now to actually fill in that sub role?
Yeah, so obviously that opened a void in our roster, and we actively sought out Standy, who has been a Challengers player for about 2 years. He won Challengers Champs last year, and he's been on our radar or Brian's radar specifically, for over a year now, and we're just really happy to be able to put him in, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And IKON Kingdom, I'm stoked to hear your guys' impressions on this. Obviously, IKON, we do the co-stream together, and so when we saw that RØKKR match, the Paris match, and then the Florida match, you and I were just kind of sat there like, wow, man, what is going on and what is going to happen? So yeah, I would just love to know your guys' takes on this swap. Do you think it's the right time, right place, right people? I'd love to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, so first of all, once the stage 2 groups were picked, I personally was kind of shocked that just to see how the teams, I figured once LA Thieves was put over in Group A, I thought the next group would be between Florida, New York, or Minnesota. I thought that's kind of where they were at the time. So to see New York come through, and then Paris come through, and then Toronto come through, and the teams kept coming off the board, I was a little shocked to see Minnesota go so low. So I thought that first week was super important. Obviously, going into the second week matches, having to go up against Optic and Dallas, which are most people would probably agree those are the two toughest matches in the second stage. So I thought those first 2 matches were super important for overall standing and trying to make the winner's bracket out of this second stage. And to see those kind of go how they went, I thought that was probably the first time where we started to think, okay, the match against Toronto in the stage 1 major didn't really go the way that we wanted it to go. So that was the first time. And then we saw the match against Paris and just kind of took me by surprise. And the same thing with Florida. And it just didn't seem like we were getting the production that we hoped, just from, kind of all over the place. Attach was playing really well, of course, but Attach always plays well. But from Priesta and accuracy, and Mike didn't really look super comfortable with the QBZ the second day he went and he ran the Krig a little bit more, and it just didn't seem like the comfort level was there. So at that time, there had been some roster moves made, like with Paul X coming on and with Insight. And I think one major difference this year from last year is that there really weren't a ton of roster moves made right away last year. And I think this year you're seeing teams start to realize that, okay, it's the second major, or it's the second stage. And even though it's only the first week, if there's something that's not working right and we're not performing the way that, up to the standards that we have, let's go ahead and let's try to shake things up a little bit early. So I thought it was interesting. Of course, Standy's been playing super well, both in Challengers, just won the last Challengers Cup. And I mean, he's a great player. I think he's going to complement Attach really well. But biggest thing that I see is that it's going to allow Priesta to do the things that he likes to do, right? Where we've seen him have the most success in the past is when he's playing a fast AR alongside Simp and Abizi. And that's really where he can just be free to do what he likes to do and what he does best. So I think that this will probably give him the freedom to feel a little bit more comfortable. And when you pair a true SMG alongside Attach, that should open everything up. Of course, we have, some questions about how it came about and, like why Standy over maybe a couple others that might be there. Not that it's the wrong move, just that, we've seen Venom come up recently and some other AMs. But overall, I think it was much needed. I think it's tough. I think Mike is like a pro's pro, right? I mean, that's kind of who he is. And it's tough to see and it's tough to go through, but sometimes these are the tough decisions that come along. So it's interesting to see how the scene as a whole is making moves early, but I think it's a right move, and I think it's going to allow Attach to feel a little bit more comfortable knowing he has a true SMG, and Priesta to feel a little bit comfortable being in the flex role or the second AR role. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it's nice to see that, we're not waiting forever, and if something needs shaken up, we're not afraid to go through and do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you pointed out a few good things, Brian. I'll jump in just because I had a couple things I heard that I felt like we should speak to, and then I'll kick it over to you. I think the draft selection was a really good point. Like, that had to have been scary to look at, especially going into beating, some pretty good teams in the first stage. One thing that's interesting is that draft selection was redone 3 times. We got picked in different places. I couldn't tell you. It was a back end thing, and teams were teams were picking duplicatively, and there was
writing a letter. What the heck?
I told you guys it was too interesting how different the groups.
So that was interesting to say the least. I think to answer your question, like going into Paris, we recognized how important those first 2 days were. I guess not your question, but your statement. Like, those 2 matches were must wins for us, particularly because of the back half of our pool play, sort of experience. So we were actively working and hyper focusing on those first 2 matches. With that being said, our practices have been really good, and they haven't translated into matches. And the mistakes we're making in matches, we're able to point out and identify. We identified them after the Dallas match weeks, a month ago, and we fixed them in practice, and they continuously happen in matches. So after the Toronto match, where it seemed to happen again, Brian and I actively troubleshot and said, okay, like, if this doesn't turn around, we should have someone ready to go. We're not sure what change would need to be made, but we want to fix this internally. But if we can't, we don't want to be waiting around. We want to figure this out ahead of time. And that's when we sort of started hyper focusing on Standy or Eli. So I think I wanted to point out the sort of sequence of events. And then when the mistakes happened again, particularly in the Paris series, I think it became apparent that there was something that needed to be done on our side. So those were just a few of the talking points I wanted to get out before throwing it to Bry.
Yeah, the only thing I really want to say outside of all that is it felt like now was the perfect time to make the change because A, we get the best experience possible going up against Optic and Dallas this week, and B, You can't wait until later in the season, especially with this format, to try and make a change to turn things around. You need to start acclimating these points now. We're currently tied for seventh with like 4 teams, and the longer we wait and hope things get better, the bigger pit we put ourselves into, and then we kind of get to a point where we're reliant on a really good group stage and then a really good major placing. So it's better to try and push the initiative now, get as many reps as possible, and climb when there's still a lot of cushion left toward the later half of the season.
I think this is not a position that the Minnesota RØKKR planned on being in, obviously. This team would probably have stayed together if you guys were like top 6. I mean, I was surprised that the LA Thieves are making a change because they are top 6, but they want to stay there, so they're one of the only teams. The other teams making these changes are in the bottom 4, which is where Minnesota finds themselves, even though they're tied for 7th. And so I think it was absolutely the right time. One of the things that nobody thought about last year and people aren't thinking about this year, well, now they are, is like, I mean, we talked about it on the first episode of our show. If you accumulate enough points, if Atlanta FaZe wins another major, it's like they're guaranteed champs. Then they're just playing for their seeding. Yep. And getting into champs, there's only 8 teams going. Getting into champs is the bottom of the barrel for players like Attach. Like that's not, and for an organization like the Minnesota RØKKR, you guys, like, not making champs would be lower than not winning a tournament this year. Like, you got to get into champs. And I think the organization is making a smart decision. I think this is the first time in the history of COD that I've seen coaches really make most of the roster decisions, is what it feels like, I'll say. And I can imagine for you, Brian and Jake, you guys have been asked so many questions. It's like a media junket, like you just made a movie or something, and you're getting asked the same questions over and over and over. And I kind of wanted to ask you, Brian, and maybe you haven't been asked this, as a former player, seeing the way trades are made now. Like, Attach was saying he watched the series with Standy yesterday or the day before, but he didn't really know, he couldn't name like his teammates from last year. But old school COD, yeah, you picked up people you knew. You picked up, and I'm not saying it's a friends league or anything like that, but it's like you picked, because there's friends that are in the Challengers League right now, like Saints and Methods and stuff like that. So, homies aren't just getting picked up these days. It's more serious, and there's a lot that goes into it. And you guys have had to make a very tough decision for an entire organization, and I can't imagine the pressure of that. My question for you is, as a former pro player, how different are roster changes? And from you being a part of that change, what does that pressure feel like as a coach when you're making a decision for all of the Minnesota RØKKR, like who's going to be the next player on the team?
No, I mean, you're completely right. It's definitely much different. When we kind of came to the conclusion that we would like to explore picking up a SMG player from the challenger scene, before we even told them we were, interested in Standy and trying to work things out with him to bring him on as our sub. They were naming familiar names for all them as, someone we should pick up. And they knew pretty much nothing about Standy at all. They were talking to me like, "Are you sure this kid's in? Like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" I'm like, "Trust me. Like, I will send you a lot of VOD he has from, this season and even last season if you want to see that. Like, I put my trust in this kid. Like, you guys are just gonna have to trust me on this one." I mean, if you look at these other teams, they've all been going the route of picking up these newer players that, the general pros in the scene don't know too much about. So you're just gonna have to take my word on this one, and like, when this kid gets here, I guarantee you he will live up to the expectations. So there's definitely pressure in that regard, because, if he doesn't live up to the standard, I hold him to, then I feel like the players lose a little bit of trust in me. But I think just the first day of him being here, he's really shown that he's more than just a player that can run around and kill things. We were going, through hard points and stuff, and after the match, he's like, "Yo, we got to play this like this. We got to do this, yo." And his small talk and his communication, just setting up breaks and pushes, was unbelievable. It was probably the best out of any player on our team today. So seeing him bring that level of communication and, being so certain of the plays we need to make is something I love to see from a Challengers player.
That's really cool insight to hear, because my next question was going to be, how did we kind of come to this conclusion, in the past, as Kingdom, mentioned, the roster changes were driven by the players. And I think to a certain extent, they should be, right? You have to be comfortable with who you're playing with. And there's a general awareness there of what's, who's good and who's going to fit. But we've seen it multiple times last year, and now there's already 3, well, I guess only 2 technically, because Insight was from the bench and not from challengers, but you've got Venom going on to LA Thieves, you've got Paul X going on to London. Like, people are getting called up from the amateurs, and they're having a positive effect on those teams. And so I think, although it may be sometimes uncomfortable, or there's not yet a rapport there between those players, like, that can get built up, especially when you have just a young cracked kid who's going to come in and be able to just up the tempo. And I guess my question is, Brian, how did the process kind of work with, I mean, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but like, did you guys talk with the players, like each, who had their input, and just kind of what was that process like? And I guess, well, I'll ask my next question next, or maybe I'll let IKON ask a question, since we're kind of going in order. So IKON, think of your next question, and Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, after we lost the 2 matches, I feel like even if we went one-on-one, we'd be having this conversation, but we had one-on-one sit-downs with every player and kind of asked them, what could we improve with the team, and what direction we should go, because we're definitely not performing to the expectations and standards we hold ourselves to, and what we see in practice every day. Things just weren't translating in the way we expected. So after having all those one-on-one conversations, we came to, the conclusion that I talked about before, and I feel like that's pretty much it. Yeah, I really don't know what else to say on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can touch on it. I think, like Brian said, had we gone one-on-one, I think we still would have at least had the discussion with our players individually. I mean, to Kingdom's point, like you said, if we won one of the matches, you might not have seen a change. We would be, sort of a top 6, top 7 team. To be honest, to Brian's point, we hold ourselves to a much higher standard than a top 6, top 7 team.
Yeah.
So I think these conversations still would have been had. The transition might not have been as quick, but to just go a little more in depth, it was really, 2-hour long one-on-one sessions with all 4 players. It was an 8-hour ordeal. It was very much, what could we as coaches do better? What do you identify as your weaknesses as a player? This is what we think you could do better. What do you think the team needs to do to improve? And I think the unanimous decision across the board, 4 players, 2 coaches, 6 people, deciding that the way that we could maximize our skill ceiling is moving Preston to a second AR and making a switch. So, I mean, and to Ashley's point, like, or Kingdom's, like, it is very much changing, and there's a paradigm shift between players making all the roster decisions and coaches making them. But at the end of the day, a coach probably in Call of Duty isn't going to put a person on their roster that's going to make all 4 people uncomfortable. So in that sense, there is a discussion internally, and everyone does sort of eventually come to agreeance on things like that.
Yeah, just to kind of jump in here, I think there's no doubt about it that if you're thinking what's the best version of Minnesota moving forward, it's the version where Preston's being the Preston that he was signed to be, right? So I think for Minnesota to achieve what Minnesota wants to achieve, Priesta has to be in a spot where he feels comfortable and he can just absolutely shred. But with that, and this was just kind of the big thing going around, was there any part of a discussion about maybe moving Mike to main AR and trying that? Or was it strictly just, with in-game leadership and like making calls in S&D, was it just, I mean, at this point in time, with this current move, you really only have to change one role, right? You're just taking Priesta and just putting him over to flex. So if you're now changing 2 things, was it just a little bit too uncomfortable, or what was kind of the thought process there?
No, that's a really good question. And I think that was the hardest part, was everyone came to the same conclusion, Mike and Lamar included, that in order to maximize our skill ceiling, because of what was going on in matches, Preston needed to run the second AR. Both of them realized that. They then realized that meant we could put Mike on a sub and we would get better, we would be good, but it wouldn't allow us to reach our maximum skill ceiling. So, at that point, everyone was sort of understood what needed to happen, and everyone was on the same page, which in some instances made it easier on us, but in others made it harder because it was like, someone has to step down who has, statistically been playing well or playing okay. And the team made the decision that the first sort of step we wanted to take in trying to fix this problem, or the first iteration of making us better, was keeping Lamar in to begin with. I mean, Brian, feel free to give your spin.
No, I mean, that's spot on how it was. There's not really too much to dive into there.
And I mean, it's never black and white. It was probably, the hardest decision I've made since coaching, or even as a player, when I competed, deciding between roster decisions, because the pros and cons for each sort of make it a very short of a coin flip. So like really hard decision. And, it wasn't just like we had 15-minute conversations with everyone and someone licked their finger, put their, finger in the sky and said, accuracy it is.
I heard you say the words first iteration, which is interesting because, there is a narrative that some people are saying, I mean, Mike's still on the bench. Like, this isn't, he's not off the team, and so I don't think you guys would change the entire roster after these next two matches, but who knows what happens, and how, poorly, things show up. I did want to throw real quickly. I know that when you're picking a team, there's other roles besides main AR and flex and SMG and second SMG. There's leadership roles within the team. There's in-game leadership that is important to have on your team. You can't just put a team of friars together and not have in-game leadership. Did any of that go into the decision making that you guys had? Like, is he in game leading in a game mode that was important for you guys to keep him for, or something like that?
I think you're on the right track. I will say that Lamar has had multiple years in competing where he's taken a player who has had limited reps at the professional level, and after a month of playing with them has begun winning championships. Kenny was a pro before he started playing with Lamar, but he was sort of at the fringe of amateur and pro in AW. And you saw what him and Ken were able to do together. You saw what happened when Matt came in last year and was sort of able to be molded by veteran leadership and someone who prides themselves in creating structure and building an environment that is able to be repeated. And to sort of, I guess, slightly change your question, but still answer it at the same time, like, I think that's something that all of us saw and was one of the reasons why it was sort of maybe moved the needle in the direction of making that tough choice.
Brian, it'd be sucky. You guys see my cat. He wants food. Brian, it would be, I guess, great to know because people have been wondering, and I've actually been curious of this myself. I think and we all know, like, Lamar is the captain of the team, right? Like, internally and externally, we know he's that IGL, but we also do know that Major Maniac was a pretty big IGL in Search and Destroy. Is that, always been the case? Has it been the case less lately? Just kind of explain that dynamic of now, like, we were very, very good at Search at the beginning of stage one, and that was great to see. But do you guys see that kind of improving, staying the same, or is it just hard to say? I guess who's the IGL for Search and Destroy, to simplify my question?
Yeah. It's definitely hard to say if we're going to get better or worse at that game mode yet, because it's the one we've obviously yet to play the least. But I think Mike brought a ton of great ideas, and setting up our plays, our defaults, and some pushes here and there, kind of just when we would go into a private match and do our baseline strats. But when it came to in game, it wasn't really strictly him calling every single play. It was a bit of a collective. People would kind of trade on and off every single round. I think bringing Standy in, I think it gives us the option to kind of make some more aggressive plays in S&D. One thing we were really lacking on prior, even though our record was good, is I think our first blood rate was incredibly low. It might have even been the worst in the league, although we had that really good record. So I think bringing Standy can allow us to make a lot more pushes and kind of just add a lot more variables to our S&D gameplay. I don't really know who's going to be calling the most in-game. I think it'll definitely be a bit of a collective, as it kind of has been recently. But yeah, we'll see what ideas he brings to the table, because he originally, comes from S&D like pretty much every single other player in the scene at this point. And I think Standy just brings a lot of new ideas. He's played so many tournaments this year being in Challengers, so he's probably seen so many different things in S&D that we personally haven't. And I feel like it'll go a long way.
Damn, I didn't even think about that. That's a great call out and point. Like, yeah, the guys are scrimming every day, but they're typically scrimming hard point and control. And I don't know how your S&D scrims work, but it's probably not nearly as frequent as those respawn modes. Whereas Standy, there's all these Challenger Cups and events and tournaments where S&D is thrown in there, so he could have more, experience, which could maybe even bring some new looks to what we're doing. I guess I gotta ask, just selfishly, and then I'll let the question asker rotate, because it's the rotation. How have scrims been going? And by how have scrims been going, I mean, how many have you been able to play in one day so far? And because he literally just got here to Texas today. Have you guys been able to play and get a look at the new guy?
Yeah, we had 2 scrims today. I think they both went well. I mean, we're still learning how to play together, so you can't really expect to just go out there and fry every single map your first day of scrims, especially when one player is changing a role and then you bring a brand new player to the team. But I think the framework is really there, and I think Standy's kind of brought some new ideas to the table that are really going to help us improve our gameplay. It was funny because when he first got here and we were talking to him, he's like, yeah, I was watching a lot of your guys' VOD, and I was thinking this, and this. And I was like, whoa, those are all like really good points. And they're things like we have actively been trying to work on. So the fact that you see that and want us to go that direction with our gameplay, it's awesome that you're pretty much almost immediately on the same page as us. And yeah, just watching him play, watching Preston pick up that AR and, get a lot more comfortable with it. I think we have something really good brewing up here. And once we kind of get, some of our breaks, our setups, and rotations kind of just, fully synchronized, things should, go the route we're expecting.
Yeah, I think it's still early days for us. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into making everyone comfortable with playing with one another, and it doesn't happen in 48 hours. But one thing that I think that is super good about the time frame and how quickly Standy's coming in is he's getting thrown into the mix against 8 of the best players in the world, and it doesn't get harder than that. So he is getting 2 days of practice, getting to at least feel out the guys and how they play around the map together. And then he gets to go into his first official matchup, and he will know the hardest it could get for him. And I think setting that bar really high will make the transition from, top challengers player to pro that much easier.
So I agree. I also slightly disagree because I think that a lot of these younger players, I know a lot of them have never experienced LAN. And I know that's not a thing anymore. We're kind of going away from that a little bit. But I do know that I like Standy's chances more in an online environment than listening to the green wall scream at him for his first match. I can't imagine.
Can't
like,
disagree.
we saw what happened.
Amen. No, amen.
Yeah.
See, I would like to chime
luckily,
in too. I feel like that's also a really good thing about these young players coming up and kind of starting with the online matches. You get in the groove of playing against these pro teams and playing with these pro players. So when you go to LAN for the first time with a pro team, you've already been playing with them. You already know how all these other pro teams play. So the transition will be nearly as bad because there's a lot less pressure since you've been doing it for so long already.
You make
And I
a
also
great
wanna
point,
go ahead,
Kingdom,
Trey.
though. When you're playing in your bedroom against Optic, it doesn't vibrate when Scump gets a two-piece. But when you're on main stage and
Yeah.
Scump gets a two-piece, you could be up by 200 or down by 200, and your booth is shaking. So,
Yeah, and
I
it's
mean, good call
demoralizing.
out.
Even if you're winning the game, it's like you hear Puckett screaming something about Scump. I can't imagine what that was like when those guys like, or you're diffusing and you hear all this noise, and it's like, oh well, I'm about to die. You know,
Yeah, that's it. It's when Optic like jumps, or when your team jumps on the bomb and the crowd goes crazy, and all of a sudden, the bomb gets checked. So,
right. So I do want to
that,
say though, I'm not throwing any shade whatsoever to these amateur players, because Zuma made a point on his show. He said that very few people have been great online and then horrible on LAN. Like very,
100%.
very few.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
don't, like, with one hand you could name them, and we're not going to name anybody, but very, very few. And I do think that Scump Abner like changed the game a long time ago, and Simp changed it again, where it was like, there are these talents that nobody's paying attention to that are available. And you guys said it earlier, no one has played more competitive Call of Duty than Challengers players over the last 2 years. Like that they just have played so much competitive COD at the highest level, and I'm talking about the top guys at the highest level for a long time, and so I think even giving Parasite the shot that he had in London was a good opportunity. It was like London didn't make a bad decision there. Parasite wanted to be comfortable rather than leading, which probably would have kept him on the team. But, he has spoken on that. And so I did kind of want to ask you guys, like, so I heard Attach say on his own channel, like, he's like, and I'm hearing this a lot more recently, and I think you guys might have said it in your announcement, but you're going into a very difficult couple of matches. These days, we're not shy about calling teams the best in the world or the second best or top three. Like, that's not something that pro players, I've heard Octane and other pro players just say out loud. Like, they mention these teams that they're great, and Optic is a great team. They have one of the greatest players in the history of the game. They have a couple of them. And so, and some up and comers, that are going to be shining for a minute. And so I guess my question for you guys is, like, what does success look like outside of just saying, like, we want to, just get practice? Because I know you guys want more than that. But, like, going into this match as a team on a positive note, like, what are you looking for as coaches to make this a successful, even let's just talk about the first match versus Optic Gaming. You guys are the second match on Thursday. Like, what does success look like?
A win.
I wasn't even gonna say that. I was gonna say a 3-0.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, like, we're in the business to win. We hold ourselves accountable every day. We hold that we strive to be champions. There's not a single day we get on and say we'd be okay with second. Anything short of a W is an L. Period.
Bro,
Well,
is
right
it
now,
nerdy that I
especially
just
with
got
how our
hyped?
first week went. Well, right now with how our first week went too, I think nothing less than a 3-0 is what we need.
Yeah, it would be a changing of narrative if you guys 3-0'd Optic. It would literally, it'd be like, oh, snap. Dallas might even make sure they go back and relook at some VODs, like, and see what the heck Standy's doing on the map. Like, I mean, it would be awesome for you guys, and I hope your team plays like that. Like, that's my hope for Minnesota this upcoming weekend, is that Minnesota comes out and plays like, not that there's something to prove, but that they're a great team. And they can play against Optic Gaming. Like, things have separated, and I don't know if that's because of the meta, but things have separated even more than originally at the beginning of the season. Yeah, the big three have kind of stayed the big three at the top, but there's other teams that are actually making moves, and now they're looking different, than originally. Like, it was like, oh yeah, Florida's going to be amazing, and now it's like, well, we don't know, and so it's gonna be really interesting, and I would love to see a very competitive match on Thursday.
Yeah.
By you guys.
It's important too. I mean, the match itself is important. It's important because we need points. And like I said, like, if it's not a win, it's a loss. But it's important because we need Standy to get as many match reps and 60 hertz reps in as possible. He hasn't played on a 60 hertz server in this game. And at the end of the day, these matches, like, we need to win them. But what is most important is the major, because that's where you get the most points, and we need match reps. We need period, I think.
So just to explain the format just real briefly. Go ahead, Icon, if you want to kind of touch on that. I was going to move to the next spot.
I was just going to say, it's something that we've touched on a couple times is like when you're looking at the standings overall, even though Minnesota did have a 3-2 and got put into losers bracket, just the fact that you guys didn't win the tiebreaker and you got put into losers bracket, that's the biggest reason why you're underneath LAG in the seeding, is just because even though they went 2 and 3, they started in winners bracket. They ended up getting a bump in the losers round, and now they got those 10 extra points. So when you're mentioning like the majors and how important it is and how many more CDL points, like that's the biggest reason right now. Well, it was until, like the most recent matches against Paris and Florida, but it just kind of stresses how important those majors are. And one other thing that I wanted to point out, Jake, you said this a while ago and I've kind of been thinking about it, but just looking at like the season overall, obviously very first matchup against LA Thieves came out and everybody was super hyped for that match and it just didn't go Minnesota's way. And then the next match against Dallas came out, got a 3-2 victory. Everybody was super hyped, came back, beat Seattle. And at that point, it seemed like, okay, Minnesota has something here. Of course, the New York match didn't go the way you wanted. And then after that, sure, you beat London, but then a loss to Toronto in the major in the last 2 matches. But I thought I heard you say earlier that you noticed things even in that Dallas match that Minnesota wasn't doing, that you picked up that things weren't the way that you guys wanted them to be, like in that match. So even back then, you guys recognized not necessarily like bad parts of your game, but just things that weren't going correctly. So when I'm looking at this roster move overall, I guess what I was thinking is like, when this first started to come up, was it all the way back then against the Dallas match where you kind of realized maybe this isn't going to go how we thought it would?
Yeah, I think, and one, it's a good question. I would say the Dallas match, playing a top hardpoint team and playing them close, like the 100T, the Garrison was close, but the Moscow obviously wasn't. You learn way more from close losses than you do blowouts. So those close hardpoints showed what we were doing wrong in that series. And I think we were able to identify what we were doing wrong early, like I said, right after the Dallas match. And from that point forward, we kind of knew what we needed to focus on in practice. We hard focused it to the point where we got very good at the mistakes we were making. We were making mistakes that weren't the ones that we make in matches. We were making less mistakes in terms of fundamentals and more nuanced mistakes, which are the ones you want to occur in practice. But then we would go into the match and you would see a sort of relapse, and that we would get the kills on the map, we would put ourselves in a great position, and we wouldn't capitalize on that. And in practice, we were very good at getting the initial kills and doing what we needed to with them to put teams in really like unfavorable situations. We'd get into the match, we'd get a setup, we'd get the first wave, and then we weren't pushing out. And you saw it happen again. We were really good before the Paris match. And when it happened, and by that time, when it happened in that match, we said, okay, we fixed this problem in scrims. It's not happening, but it's consistently recurring in matches. We can't be this close to it clicking and just waiting for it to click because it may never. We think it's time, with how important points are, to step in.
That's a really good point, Jake, and perfectly leads into my next thing. Just a quick refresher, how does this all work? Are we not going to make the major now? What are we talking about, champs? It's only freaking March. What's going on? So, guys, the pool play or group stage that we're watching right now in stage 2, we've played 2 of our group. We still have 3 matches to play versus Optic, Dallas, and Surge. No light competition there. Even if, and I don't think this will happen, but even if we don't have a super killer last 3 matches, we will still make it into the major. We will just be starting in the lower bracket or the losers bracket if we don't, I think it's placed top 3 in our group. So what does that mean? Well, starting the lower bracket means you cannot lose. If you start in the upper bracket or winners bracket, you can afford to lose one time and then you drop down and you still fight through. And to King, or I think it might have been all of you guys, IKON especially, mentioning those points that you can earn at the major, that is critical and crucial. So are these group stage matches. Don't get me wrong, they're important. They're 10 points per dub. But where at the majors is really where you make your coin, especially if you win that dang thing. Oh my God, the dream. I think we could get there. I really do. Maybe I'm just drinking the purple Kool-Aid, but I believe. And so what all this leads into is I think we're in stage 2 of 5. Coaches, correct me if I'm wrong, of the year. And at the end of those 5 stages, you have playoffs, aka champs. The top 8 of the 12 teams make it to champs, and then they play. And the winner gets like mad money in a ring. So the whole goal is to accumulate enough points to make it to champs and to get the best seeding possible in that scenario so you can bring home a championship to Minnesota. Did I do that right? I think I nailed it, right? That's all the details we need.
Yep.
And that kind of like feeds into the point here is, last year we started really hot with that old roster. It was cool, but then it just didn't start going well and we ended up in a really tough spot at champs. I know it sucks right now because we all agree and feel this team has been not playing to their full potential. I mean, this roster's freaking nuts. It's absolutely crazy. It's underwhelming so far, but I would rather have it be underwhelming at first to have a strong finish. And that's something that I believe like you coaches, all the players, everyone at the organization really can pull it back and turn this thing around. I guess I want to get your guys' take. Obviously, we decided to make a roster change because of all the aforementioned formats and how important these W's and points are. But like looking at the other teams who've also made changes, let's go over them real quick. We had Toronto benching Methods in favor of Insight. Now, don't get me wrong, Insight's a heck of a player. But what? Zitty? Come on. Chef? Come on, man. You can't do that.
No Zinni, no Winnie.
So, yeah, they no Zinni, no Winnie. I believe in that hashtag. So, yeah, they bench Zinni in favor of Insight. Then on, Florida, I don't think they pulled someone from the bench, but they have, like, a crazy, like, kind of new roster coming into this year. You've got Venom now coming onto LA Thieves in place of Temp. You've got Paul Hex going on to London. We have Standy coming on to RØKKR. Why do you think so many teams are making these changes? Obviously the points are really important, but, is that something that you guys kind of foresaw happening? And I want to get like your guys' takes on these other teams kind of picking up AMs or like Insight came from the bench. Saintt, what do you think about the other maneuvering you see other teams doing right now?
I mean, it's definitely not unexpected. We saw it happen last year, although not as much as right now. But with it happening last year, it posed to be a very successful way to move the roster around. So I think a lot of teams are just going off that. And I think if you look to a lot of other esports as well, you'll see like CS teams take in these young talents who end up being prodigies. So I think a lot of teams are trying to look for, that player that's going to be the next big thing. Because unless you're like one of the really big name, big market teams, you're not really going to get these super highlight already established players like Scump, Simp, Abizi. I feel like all of them are pretty much, locked into whatever teams are on from the start of their career. So I think all these other teams are kind of looking for the next Simp, the next Abizi, kind of like how eUnited had their I forgot what they called them. I guess their academy team, youngin team, whatever they were called at the time. So yeah, everyone's kind of looking for that. The cadets, that's what it was. So everyone's looking for the next young player that's kind of going to be their golden ticket, I feel like.
Jake, would love to know your thoughts. You're seeing other teams. I mean, even LA Thieves, like on the same day as us, coming out with could play your guys' roster change videos side by side. It's kind of the same formula going on. What do you think about these other pickups these other teams have made? And I guess how more hyped than them are we that we got Standy? He seems like a standout to me. Get it? Because his name's okay, I'm sorry. I'll let you go.
I think we got a steal. I'm happy we were able to get Standy before anyone else. I think all the roster changes going around in the league are just showing that you really can't slack off. I think it's different now that coaches have insight on the roster, which we spoke to earlier. And I think last year was really cool and sort of paved the way for picking up amateurs, because you saw a team like New York go from having, 20 CDL points when they picked up Mac to finishing 5th at champs. I mean, when when New York had 20 CDL points, we had, I can't even remember. We had qualified for champs by then.
Yeah.
And watching what that's able to do to a roster, I think inspired people going into this year, and everyone made sure to sort of take that a little more seriously.
Wonderful. Yeah, it makes sense to me. It does hurt because I do think Major Maniac is a hell of a player. I don't think that he is a bad player. It seems like this is a role issue that, we had to make a change. We have to move Preston, so that means the role has to move, and Major Maniac is gonna chill for a sec. But I think overall, looking at this, you have to feel positive, bringing in a young talent who can maybe help turn this thing around. So I commend you guys on all the effort there. I know this was not an easy past 5 days for you guys. I'm pretty sure Jake hasn't slept in like 4 years, maybe even Brian.
No, I
too.
slept last night.
Let's go. I knew you. Yeah, I knew you probably had to. You might have passed out otherwise. So before we go, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I would love to do some rapid fire predictions. Obviously, we can get a little long-winded with our predictions on the show. And so now we've got 5 people to roll through. So let's keep our explanations brief. Shout out Kingdom Soldier, and we'll try to just go through these as fast. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to throw that tag, and that was messed up. But yeah, so let's go through these matches. Let's give rapid fire predictions. You guys can see us on the screen, right? So let's go in order, like in a circle, clockwise. All right, I'll start. We got Dallas Empire versus Paris Legion. 3-1 Dallas. That's me. That's my prediction. Shannon, mark it in the spreadsheet. Let's go.
Oh, we're going game by game?
Yeah,
well, then I would
counterclockwise.
am I next,
go game
or
by
is it
game.
counter?
Yep. No, I'm
So
sorry,
me.
clockwise. I've literally, my brain too. It's been a long couple days.
Well, we're looking at the reverse, yeah, so it's confusing. But I'll go. I would say 3-1 Dallas as well.
Heck yeah. Jake, what do you think? Is this an upset alert?
No, I just don't know if it's a 3-0 or a 3-1. I'll go 3-1. Be respectful.
Damn, y'all copied me. That's crazy. No, I'm just kidding. Icon, what do you think? Dallas versus Paris.
I do think Dallas is going to win, but Paris is looking good. I think not very many people are expecting them to be where they're at, especially with how late in the game they came aboard. So I'll go 3-2. I think Dallas has a little bit too much in search, but I think it's going to be close.
Brian, what are you thinking?
I just got audio again, so I missed the entire question.
Let's go.
Dallas Paris Legion predictions.
Prediction.
Map count.
Paris looked really good when they played us. I think they're on the up and up right now. Dallas did look not too great against Seattle, but I do think them winning a tight series like that is kind of going to fuel their fire a little bit and get them, back on their grind. So I'm going to go with Empire 3-1.
Nice. 3-1s across the board. Optic Chicago versus Minnesota RØKKR. RØKKR 3-0. Standy, hell yeah, let's go. Okay, that's it. That's crazy. That's a wild prediction. I'm going to say we're going to steal that control and win both the searches. RØKKR wins 3-2. Yes, I am biased. Don't come for me, chat. Kingdom, what do you think? And it's okay if you don't predict RØKKR to win, even though the coaches are staring at you right now.
I'm always honest. And people have always called me an Optic fanboy anyway, so they're probably ready for it. I would say I'm going to say 3-2 Optic, but I am going to say that this is a series that the RØKKR not only can win, I don't want to say should, but I do think that one of the things that I've seen with these young guys is they're such a surprise that these other teams aren't ready for them. And so I don't know if you guys have scrimmed Optic or if you're going to before this match, but I would say if it's a surprise, Minnesota could steal this. Like that could be a dub for Minnesota.
Yo, I love that.
Yeah,
Let's
we're not
go.
playing them until after we play them. That's kind of how all teams do it. Like the
Our
week
man.
or like the week and a half before you play a team, you're
Yeah.
generally just not going to play them. So I mean, we will be scrimming them the day after our match, but until then, they're not seeing anything.
Awesome. Could be a good game.
Yeah, definitely won't be playing them before. I know Standy's excited to square up against the Green Giants. I will go RØKKR 3-2. Want to see a game 5.
Yo, I hope it's Express S&D again. Attach, I mean, I know we didn't win that map, but Attach was playing like it was 2013, dude. It was crazy. That was nuts. IKON, what's your prediction? Optic versus RØKKR on Thursday.
All right, I'll be the one. I think it's going to be a 3-0 Optic. Now, I will say, I think if you play them in like...
Oh, you're fired.
3-0?
I think if you play them in like stage 3 or stage 4, you got some time to gel. You can counter the aggression out of Envoy and stuff like that. Maybe things will be different. But the team just came together, and those 4 over at Optic are insane. Envoy's always all over the map. You never know where he's going to be. Dashy's like got the best gun skill on the planet right now. So I think right now, I'm just going to have to say 3-0 Optic. But I think if you ask me in stage 3 or stage 4, I think it'll be a little bit of a different story.
I'm very happy that we still have 4 stages left.
Yeah, we get to roast you like horribly on Tuesday if they win this series. Like we're just gonna pile it all on.
Exactly.
I mean, I feel like amateur players thrive a lot more when they're going into a series as the underdog. When an amateur gets slotted on a top team like an Optic or a FaZe or something like that, there's a lot more pressure on them. So I think this is the perfect match for Standy to get his first pro reps in.
Man, imagine making your pro debut against the GOAT. No offense to Crim6, Scump is my GOAT.
Yeah, I mean,
just the best player consistently for so many years, even in this COD still. He's a fry guy. I'm excited to see, the sub versus sub angle there with Standy and Scump. All right, boys, we don't have that much time left, and I know I did say rapid fire, but we legit have to do rapid fire now. Not as much explanation. Just give me your best predictions. Subliners versus Ravens.
I'll do it. No, I'll do it. I'll do it start to finish. Subliners, FaZe, Toronto, LAT.
Nice. Okay.
I'm gonna go with Gorillas upset because I feel like they're gonna need a win there, and I don't know. I just feel like they're gonna pull that one out. Surge, RØKKR, Optic.
All right, now write them down. Maybe Shannon could track the coaches' predictions as if you guys don't know, we're tracking in a spreadsheet the predictions, and I fried week 1 and then didn't make predictions for 2 weeks, and I'll still probably win this. I don't know. We'll see. Just kidding. I gotta kid them. I just gotta talk my shit. How about let's do them all at once then? If that's better, Kingdom. Let me hear the rapid fire, the map counts for all of the maps. Not a ton of explanation, just your knee jerk.
Royal Ravens 3-1 over the Thieves. Hot take. New York Subliners. Wait, what am I looking at?
No, Brian went Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday. Kingdom's
right. Oh, my bad. Yo, you're right, Kingdom. My bad.
You guys skipped something.
That was on me.
My bad,
okay,
dude.
so I'm starting back Friday.
I have to change that. I think Subliners do beat Gorillas, and then I think Gorillas beat Ultra. I'll reverse those too.
All right, Shannon's frantically messing with a spreadsheet, I'm sure. I'm just kidding. Kingdom.
Right.
So, yeah, LA Thieves versus Royal Ravens.
It's all recorded. She can go back and watch it. I mean, not this. Yeah. That's exciting for her. London Royal Ravens. I'm going to say they're going to 3-1 the Los Angeles Thieves. New guy versus new guy. Paul X looks really good. I'm amazed. I think what he does for London is exactly what they needed, and they got confidence, and they're going to come out swinging. I would say the New York Subliners are going to beat the Los Angeles Gorillas 3-2. And the New York Subliners are going to beat the London Royal Ravens 3-1. The Atlanta FaZe are going to 3-0 the Los Angeles Thieves. I'm pretty much should just call they're on a 10 streak, longest in COD history. They're going to go to 14 or something crazy, I think, the Atlanta FaZe. I would say, spicy. Los Angeles Gorillas 3-1 the Toronto Ultra.
Damn, no Zitty, no Winnie.
And then they bring Zinni back. Or do another trade. 14-day contracts over. I don't know. I would say Seattle Surge got to win this one. I'm gonna say 3-2 Surge. I like the way the Surge are sounding. I like the way Looney's talking. I'm gonna say 3-2 Surge over the Legion. I'm gonna say Dallas. Oh gosh, this is gonna be Dallas's L. I'm gonna say 3-2 RØKKR over Dallas. They're gonna be the kryptonite of the Dallas Empire. I'm gonna say 3-2 RØKKR over Dallas, and Dallas I think is gonna end up beating Optic at that last match so that they can be first in the pool though. And then last match, Optic Chicago. Man, they're either gonna 3-0 the Mutineers and be laughing in camera, and because of their great, their humility that they threw out rating Florida above them way back in the day. But I think 3-1 Optic.
Jake, go ahead. Give me the rapid fire.
LAT 3-2, but that's, I think, going to be a ridiculously close series. Subliners 3-1 against the Gorillas.
New York plays back-to-back Friday to Saturday.
Subliners 3-2 against London, but if they lose LAG, they lose the second match too. Atlanta over 100T. Atlanta over 100T 3-1. LAG over Toronto 3-1. Surge over Paris 3-2. RØKKR over Dallas 3-2. Optic over Florida 3-1.
All right, I'll go through on Friday. I really like the combination of Pollux and Shawnee. I just love the way that they mesh together. I think that's a great combo. I'm going to go London over LA Thieves 3-1. I'm going to go New York over LAG 3-1. Going into Saturday, this is a tough one, New York versus London, which is weird because like 2 weeks ago, we wouldn't really think that this is going to be a close match at all. I'm going to say 3-2 New York, but I like where London's going. 3-0 for Atlanta over LA Thieves. I like Toronto here too. Like, what kind of rookie comes out in his first game and sets the S&D kill record? So I'm going to go 3-2 Toronto here. And then heading into Sunday, I'm super impressed with Paris. I know Seattle just got an impressive victory, but I'm going Paris here 3-1. I'm going Dallas 3-2. And then moving on to Optic versus Florida. I think this is also going to be a 3-1. So I think Florida is on the up and up, but Optic's just too strong right now. 3-1 Optic.
Nice. All right, boys, I'll give my predictions here to round it out. LA Thieves versus Royal Ravens. I do love the rookie-on-rookie matchup. I'm really excited to see how Thieves look with Venom in place of Temp. This is how I score my points to win the predictions. I'm going to go LA Thieves. I think they'll win 3-1 versus Royal Ravens. They're just going to come out with the fire. Maybe that honeymoon stage will be hitting. Maybe the Royal Ravens honeymoon stage will be ending. Then I got New York Subliners taking Gorillas 3-1. New York Subliners, are they going to lose to a pissed-off Royal Ravens on Saturday? 3-2. But I don't know. Could go anywhere, but that's my prediction. Atlanta FaZe, 3-1's LA Thieves. Toronto, no Zitty, no Winnie, man. I think Gorillas might 3-2 them. We'll see. Paris Legion versus Surge. I do think Surge has looked a lot better, which good for them because, my lord, I'm surprised they haven't made a big change yet. But I think Paris Legion takes that 3-2. It's going to be close. Dallas Empire is going to lose to Minnesota RØKKR because I think we could be their kryptonite. You know, maybe they'll come in lacking. Who knows? Not that they would, but what if they did? I think like we.
I mean, if they beat us, I'll just walk next door and beat up Crim 6.
There you go. He'd be like, "What the fuck?" I can't do a Crim 6 accent. I'm so sorry they all had to hear that. But yeah, I got RØKKR taking Dallas 3-2. And then Optic Chicago is going to 3-1. Nah, they're going to 3-0 Florida. Nah, they're going to 3-1 Florida. Shannon, write that down. All right. At exactly 8:30, we are ending this thing. I told you boys I would only take up, about an hour and a half of your time. I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate you guys coming on for this amount of time on such a busy, crazy week. I know it's been wild. I hope you guys go get some water, get some food, go get a good night of sleep, and start the grind up again tomorrow. Yeah, go get some water.
I need food bad.
Go rest. All right, I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for coming on IKON Kingdom. As always, great to talk COD with you. We'll see you guys next week. Hopefully, maybe we'll be talking to Standy this time next week, live on the RØKKR YouTube.
Are you guys doing your watch parties?
Yes, we're still doing the co-streams. Oh, yeah. Watch the co-streams. Watch the matches with IKON and I. It'll be sick. Okay. We play at 3:30